In other words, you and I must leave something behind for the next generation to build upon. We cannot expect those who remain gridlocked in Washington, D.C. to work it out for our children here in Peoria, Illinois. It's up to us.
Some of you know me and know that I'm a person of a few words. I don't really say too much. I guess it's because I'm used to, my job is very physical, so I communicate physically. So I'm a massage therapist, so you know. And speaking in front of you must be what a 4-year-old feels like when a stranger asks them a question. They're like, you know, that's my son. But seriously, I shouldn't feel like that at all. I clearly remember the day when, 2 years ago, when I first walked into Webster and I saw so many familiar faces. I saw friends who I had recognized from St. Paul. I saw friends whose church I had visited. I saw childhood friends who I grew up together and got to be reconnected with. And I saw friends that I had made when we were working our first jobs together. So I really felt like, wow, is this what everybody is doing? This is what's going on. I really felt welcomed. And one of our first visits to Webster was when they were doing those free haircuts. I don't know if you guys, does that still go on? Oh, yeah. Yes, my son still thinks of Webster as the haircut school. That's what he calls it. He never says like Head Start or anything. He says the haircut school. People say, Jacob, where do you go to school? I go to the haircut school. Like, okay. He's like, Mommy, I like it here because they make me look cool. And I just laugh inside because he's getting so much more than a haircut. He's really learning about being cool on the inside, and that is what's reflected on the outside to really make him what's cool. So I want to say thank you to all of the people who put that together, that put such wonderful programs together like the free haircuts and even also the fashion show. After experiencing these, I realized how they are more about developing self-esteem and confidence for the children. So thank you for that. I've learned so much along this childhood education journey. As an adult, I'm even ashamed to admit that I really don't know so many of these things. I feel like I'm expected to know. I'm expected to know what a parent is supposed to do. Before my involvement in the Parent Policy Council, I didn't know where parents fit into their child's education. I thought we just send our kids to school, make sure they do their homework, and that was pretty much it. I didn't realize that so much of what the school provides is based upon the feedback from the family. That is why it is so important to become involved, because that is what really makes this such a success. So thank you to all of the parents, and especially the ones who served before me, because without them, I wouldn't have had so much fun. So you're like, fun? Yes, I've had a lot of fun. I can name the numerous events that I did with my son, like the yearly trip to the Festival of Lights, the trip to the Children's Museum in Bloomington, and all of the family night out events. And, oh gosh, let me not forget about all the classroom activities. I still laugh about the Halloween that I taught Zumba-tomic, which is for kids. I went to my son's classroom, and the kids at Sterling literally danced me out of the room. They were like really into it. We had a really great time. But also, there's those events where Jacob stayed at home, and we danced and we partied with Charlie Wilson. That was a good time in St. Louis. And of course, all the fun that we had in New Orleans, and more recently in Nashville, Tennessee. In closing, I just can't stress enough how important it is for us parents to be engaged. And personally speaking, I've reconnected with old friends and made new friends that I will have for a lifetime. And it's truly the relationships that we build and create that create a stronger community for us all. Thank you.
To God be the glory for the great things that God does. It is indeed a joy, a privilege, and a pleasure to be able to be here to share this occasion with each and every one of you who have come together to celebrate your successes, the things that God has accomplished in you as mothers and fathers and grandparents, and the things that we all do in community for the benefit of these little ones sitting here at the individual tables. I always say that the many things that I do in my life, I do because at the end of the day, I am still Shelley's mama and Joseph's mama and Howard's mama. I'm still the grandmother of 13 more and the great-grandmother of 5. And so I'm a major stakeholder in this world. And so what I do each and every day of my life is so that the world that they live in will be better than the world that I live in today. To the director, McFarland Bragg, and to Reverend Dr. Maxine Wortham, very capable assistant director and member of the ministerial team at Ward Chapel, and to all of the planners and organizers for tonight's event, to the wonderful, good-looking young masters of ceremonies, give them a hand. To the board of directors, my dear friend, Sister Cassandra Powell, who has I met very early on and who has found a way to work me too. I thought I could work people pretty well, but Cassandra don't do bad. There's a song in the church that we like to sing, at least we used to sing quite frequently, and in the old days we sang it a lot, and it was entitled, "In Times Like These." The lyrics declare, somebody is a witness in the house, and the lyrics declare, in times like these we need an anchor. In times like these we need a Savior. And when I consider the poverty, the abuse and neglect and its overwhelming impact on children, I am encouraged to know that there are those who are willing to be both an anchor and a savior to children, offering them a form of stability and a safe place to grow and become. So I'd like to personally salute the planners and organizers, and most importantly, those who had the good sense to call us to gather for this celebration tonight. I have come to celebrate with you and to learn with you, but I feel that my responsibility in the time that has been allotted to me is to challenge you to consider what we will ultimately leave behind. As a community, humankind is always just one generation short of extinction. What we do today, both as individuals and parents, will greatly affect our children and our grandchildren and our children to come after them, be they by birth, by marriage, by foster care or adoption. We have a solemn obligation to them and to our God to be faithful in our witness and in our work. We want the coming generations to know that we cared enough to ask the tough questions, to demand the right answers, and to reform those institutions that depend on a population of powerless people to maintain an elite constituency. In other words, you and I must leave something behind for the next generation to build upon. We cannot expect those who remain gridlocked in Washington, D.C. to work it out for our children here in Peoria, Illinois. It's up to us. The important question is, what will that legacy be? Because I am who I am, I must use the resource that I know. The resource I know best, so I invite you to consider some well-known biblical people to discover what they left behind. Perhaps we can examine their model and evaluate the lasting nature of our own service. Whenever Abraham and Isaac traveled, they left behind altars and wells. You could trace their journeys by following the altars they built and the wells they dug. The altar, of course, speaks to their worship of God, and the well reminds us of God's provision for our daily needs. Those who followed in the pathways of Abraham and Isaac could use the altars as a place of renewing their faith and reconnecting with their traditions, and they could be refreshed on their journey by drinking from the wells that were left behind. Altars and wells would serve as reminders to the generations that followed that they were a part of a larger community and had a responsibility to contribute to its perpetuity. If we were to trace the journey of the children of Israel, we would find that their steps were marked by graves. You will recall that Israel refused to remain faithful to the task, always losing sight of the vision and ever doubting that things could be better. As a result, Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, while the older generations died off. It was history's longest funeral march, and each grave was a monument to the unbelief of the people. What a tragedy if our generation is remembered only for its unbelief. Paul said that David served his own generation, but he also served the generations that followed him. What was David's legacy? For one thing, he left behind songs. We call them psalms. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? So many psalms that David left us. He also left musical instruments. It was David who organized the temple choirs, wrote much of the music, and even developed the instruments that the Levites played. David also left succeeding generations weapons of war with which to fight the enemy. And so once again, I ask us in this room tonight, what will we leave behind for these little ones seated at the tables around this room? It has been said that the first generation fights the battles. The second generation claims the spoils and enjoys them. The third generation sails out to the enemy. As I look at the national and local statistics, I'm convinced that we are that third generation. For we are selling out our most precious ones, the lives of the little ones that are seated in this room tonight. And studies reveal that each of us at some level must bear some of the responsibility for having been poor stewards. It is easy to point our finger at children, but children are born with tabula rasa, or a clean slate. You and I are the ones that write on their little tablets, the tablets of their hearts and their minds. In other words, children learn what they live. And children also mirror what they observe. One study taken among teens most recently revealed that 65% of our teens are sexually active. 75% of them cheat on exams by their own admission. 30% had shoplifted in the last 30 days. 33% consumed alcohol on a regular basis. And 1,000 are predicted to be at risk for committing suicide this year. And so I must pose the question again. What will you and I leave behind? Will we leave an illiterate generation and bankrupt universities? Will we leave desolate streets and crowded prisons? Will we leave a food line that's long enough to encircle the globe 6 times? Will we leave a world where every 6 seconds a baby dies from some preventable disease? What will you and I leave behind? I love celebrations as much as the next person. I love to sit down and eat a great meal. But I've reached a point in my life that when I get up from the table, it's still important for me to know that I'm not the only one who is able to sit before a full plate. Abraham and Isaac left behind wells and altars, while the nation of Israel left behind thousands of graves and monuments to their unbelief. In the closing years of her life, Mary McLeod Bethune said, I leave you love. I leave you hope. I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another. I leave you respect for the use of your power. I leave you faith. I leave you racial dignity. I leave you a desire to live harmoniously with your fellow man. I leave you finally a responsibility to our young people. Each of us, no matter how you look at it, whether you want to accept responsibility or not, each and every one of us in this room has a sphere of influence. Whether you realize it or not, you have the power to influence 250 people. There are people that you will never realize were following you, not because they liked you on Facebook, but when you get to the other side. And they're able to tell you that they are there simply because of your witness. Then and only then will you appreciate the life of service that you have left behind for others to see and to know. It is important to us to realize that each of us is building a legacy of service by giving of ourselves to systems that do not promise any of us prosperity or prominence. No, that's not why we're here. We're not here so that our name will be in lights one day. We're not here even because we believe that our faces will be on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper, but we are here because we are stakeholders in the lives of little ones who depend on us to ferry them ultimately to their destiny. Each of us is building a legacy of sacrifice by giving of untold hours to rebuild our communities and our cities and even this nation. Each of us is building a legacy of sharing by giving of our personal resources, our time, our talent, our treasure, our understanding, our love, our support, all the things that money ultimately cannot buy. You and I cannot avoid leaving an inheritance for the next generation. But what we leave will either help them or hinder them. What we leave will either teach them to love or it will teach them to hate. It will either teach them to trust or ultimately teach them to mistrust. The decisions that you and I make, the examples we set, the work that we either do or do not do will help make up the legacy we leave for the next generation to follow. So as I prepare to take my seat tonight, I would just leave you with the words of my mother who always said to me, Elaine, as you go through here, Plant trees. Plant trees. Plant trees. Don't plant the tree worrying whether or not you will ever enjoy the shade it has to offer. Plant the tree. Plant the tree, for the tree you plant today will surely provide shade for your children, your children's children, and those children who come after them. So as I take my seat, I salute each of you, because each of you are here tonight because you have successfully completed the program. This represents a seed well planted. Now water the seeds that have been planted in you and allow them to grow. Allow them to grow and be that shade that covers each and every one of these little ones who is in this room tonight. Those who will take their places in the annals of greatness around this world. Those who will one day lead us in our old age. Who knows? But you are sitting tonight at the table with the next president of these United States. Some doubted it many years ago, but then in 2008, who would have ever imagined that someone that looked like those in this room would be in the White House today? Nurture the seed that has been planted in you. I believe from what I see that we will leave behind greatness that the world will gladly build upon. God bless you.
We are here to recognize parents in various categories for outstanding achievement, parents who have partnered with us and who have agreed to partner and who have kept up their part of the bargain. You have let us into your homes on home visits when you may not particularly have felt it, but we asked you and you said yes. You were home when you said you were going to be home. When we called and left messages, you returned those messages. When we made requests of you, you came through. You attended the monthly activities, and we appreciate the fact that you gave us your babies to take care of and to work with during the day. You entrusted your treasures to our keeping, and we did our best to give them everything that they needed. So now it is time for us to recognize and honor you.
I'm here to honor and recognize motherhood and fatherhood. We'll start with motherhood. For motherhood, LaSocia Franklin, Leona Buford. Would you please stand? Juanita Phillips, Tammy Sashman, Marie Perez, Nikita Thompson, these are our motherhood. Give them a hand. Our fatherhood, Homer Davis, Willie Little. Would you please stand as I call your names, please? Antonio Mabel, Eddie Patton, Dale Rudd, and Willie Woods. Give them a hand, please.
Okay, this next set of parents are being recognized for furthering their education. We have some parents here this evening that have obtained their GED, some parents that have obtained associate's degrees, that have become certified in various areas, and also parents that have obtained their bachelor's. When I call your name, please rise. Carnisha Adams. Marquita Adams. Shanitha Cotton. Sequoia Eckwood. Ashley Estes. And I apologize if I mess up your name. Charge it to my head and not my heart. Bianca Gordon. And I'm not going to attempt this first name. Last name is Hill. Ms. Hill. Matura Hill. Brandy Matern. Is it Cynthia Jackson? Brittany Mottler. Felicia Tucson. And Maria Perez.
Next category is gaining or sustaining employment. We have Chantel Brown, Homer Davis, Ashley Estes, LaScotia Franklin, Adrian Herod, Machara Hill, Jenny Hostetter, Christina Holt, Myra Ibarra, Takoya King, Willie Little, Jeremy Matern, Jason McWhirter, and Susan McWhirter, and Ashley Smith. And next category is for volunteering. We have Laurentia Alexander, Jason McWhirter, Susan McWhirter, Justin Rickman, Michael Tinsley, Cecilia Zindigas, and Miss Keitra Cage.
And our next awards are going out to some of the greatest people that would get up early in the morning when it was raining, when it was snowing, when it's hot outside, to get your children to and from school. I still want to recognize some of the monitors that didn't make it. A special go out to Brent Brooks, Tiffany Brown, Angela Childs, Michael Gully, Sherelle Hill, Carla Nims, and those were some of the special people that would call me. Carla Nims would call early in the morning and make sure, or even see if we needed her. She would volunteer her services. But we have a couple people in the back, 4 young ladies in the back, that would get up, you guys, every morning. And they came in the morning, and they did a double shift in the evening when they didn't have to. So I really want to tell them thank you, because they did some hard work. They were great monitors. I was always able to count on them. And not only that, they knew what they were doing. When I didn't know some of the kids, and I still probably don't know everybody, they are able to get on one bus and go to another and do what they got to do and get it done correctly. And there was no children left. Girls, y'all give yourself a round of applause, because y'all some great women. And that would be